Greetings, Fire Chargers! Darkblade here, and welcome to my first ever scripted video, Who Was Ahasuerus? This is a remake of an earlier video. For most of the time that I am recording this video, I will read from my script. However, there are a few times where I will go off script. Note that the words on my script are not identical to the words on this presentation. And just to note, my surname, the OU is pronounced ow, like in cloud or ground. Anyways, greetings, Fire Chargers, Darkblade here. In this video, we will potentially cover the identity of Ahasuerus mentioned in the book of Esther. The tense presents Ahasuerus as a ruler of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. So let's start off with a list of their rulers with their dates of reign so we can see who our candidates are. This is from the list of monarchs of Persia wiki page. Cyrus II, 559 to 530 BC. Cambyses II, 530 to 522 BC. Bardia, 522 BC. Darius I, 522 to 486 BC. Xerxes I, 486 to 465 BC. Artaxerxes I, 465 to 424 BC. Xerxes II, 424 BC, only recognized in Persia itself. Sogdianus, 424 to 423 BC, only recognized in Persia and Elam. Darius II, 424 BC to 404 BC. Artaxerxes the Second, 404 to 358 BC. Artaxerxes III, 358 to 338 BC. Artaxerxes IV, 338 to 336 BC. Darius III, 336 to 330 BC. And Artaxerxes V, 330 to 329 BC. So now we know who our candidates are. Some biblical scholars have already made identifications, like identifying it as Xerxes I based on Ahasuerus being etymologically derived from Xerxes' given Persian name. But this is my video, and in my video I make my case based on my data. My first reference verse is Esther 3:7, which reads, "In the 12th year of King Xerxes, in the month of Nisan, the pour, that is the lot, was cast in the presence of Haman to select a day and a month, and the lot fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar." The events of this 12th month can be seen playing out in chapter 9, and the text strongly indicates that it's still the same king here. We therefore know that Ahasuerus must have reigned at least 12 years. This lets us eliminate Cambyses II, who reigned 8 years, Bardia less than 1 year, Xerxes II less than 1, Sogdianus about 1, Artaxerxes IV 2, Darius III 6, Artaxerxes and Artaxerxes V about 1. We have cut our candidates list in half, exactly in half, with exactly 7 left. Our remaining candidates are Cyrus II, who reigned 29 years, Darius I, who reigned 36, Xerxes I, Artaxerxes I, Darius II, Artaxerxes II, and Artaxerxes III. Side note, I know the NIV here explicitly identifies him as Xerxes I, but that's because that's the conclusion that the translators have come to. My case isn't based on who any translation or scholar thinks Ahasuerus is. My case is based on the text. My choosing the NIV here is not indicative of any biases before or against any specific identification. I am not biased towards any identification of Ahasuerus and will not become biased against any non-mythicist identification until after reading the text and coming to the conclusion that it does not allow for the identification in question. I chose the NIV because it is an easy to understand version that I have in my possession, and it makes it easy to understand what's going on here. My next reference passage is Esther 2 verses 5 through 7, which read, "Now there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who had been carried off into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, among those taken captive with Jehoiachin, the king of Judah. Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, who he brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This girl, who was also known as Esther, was lovely in form and features, and Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died." This gives us a brief genealogy of Mordecai's family since the Babylonian captivity, which happened in waves. There was one wave in 606 BC, the third year of Jehoiachin's father and predecessor Jehoiakim. See Daniel 1 verses 3 through 4. There was apparently a wave at the end of Jehoiachin's reign, and one in after the Babylonian conquest of Judah in 586 BC, 2 Kings 25:11. Mordecai's ancestors came to Babylon in the second wave in 597 BC, 2 Kings 24:12-16. We can therefore construct two chronological genealogies from this anchor point and use them to determine when the events of Esther are most likely set. The first chronological genealogy assumes that each generation time is 45 years, given that Mordecai was most likely in his mid to late 40s when he was introduced, as he was close enough in age to Esther to be part of the same genealogical generation, but old enough to be her de facto foster father. It also assumes that Kish was brought to Babylon as a 0-year-old newborn baby. Consider this a long chronological genealogy. If Cush was brought to Babylon in 597 BC at age 0, he would have begotten Shimei at age 45 in 552 BC, who would have begotten Jair in 507 BC, who would have had Mordecai at 45 in 462 BCE, who would have been 45 upon his introduction in 417 BC. Oh, it seems like in this slide I accidentally wrote 562 and 517 instead of 462 and 417. Since Mordecai's introduction corresponds to Ahasuerus' 6th regnal year, 2:16 says Esther enters the king's house in his 7th year, and 2:12 says there was a 12-month waiting period before the women entered the king's house. Ahasuerus could not have been a king whose 6th year was later than 417 BC. On top of those already eliminated, this would disqualify Artaxerxes and the second and Artaxerxes the third ascension dates on screen. However, Darius II might also be disqualified, as Josephus, who in Against Apion 1, Volume 1, Paragraph 8, says that the books of the Tanakh, the Jewish biblical canon, were written between the time of Moses and the time of Artaxerxes I of Persia. Some people might object to my using Josephus here, like American sports agent David Falk, who reminds us often enough to get its own drinking game that Josephus isn't useful for super ancient history. Okay, that American sports agent thing was just a joke. But my counter is that this isn't super ancient history. Once you get to Artaxerxes and later, I think we're close enough to Josephus' own time that if the Tanakh contains a book that was written after this time, he could be reasonably expected to know about it. But since Josephus isn't the word of God, I'll mark Darius II as only may be disqualified. Our remaining candidates are Cyrus II, Darius I, Xerxes I, Artaxerxes I, and Darius II. Maybe not. But what if we construct the chronology with different assumptions? What if we instead assume that Kish was brought in as a 20-year-old adult and that a generation time is 25 years? Mordecai stays 45 years old. Kish would therefore have been brought to Babylon at 597 BC and had Shimei at 592 BC, who had Jair at 25 and 567 BC, had Mordecai at 25 at 542 BC, who was introduced at age 45 in 497 BC. We can thus eliminate any monarch from and whose sixth regnal year was before 497 BC. This additionally disqualifies Cyrus II and Darius II. Darius I. Our remaining candidates are Xerxes I, Artaxerxes I, and maybe also disqualify Darius II. I think Xerxes or Artaxerxes are most likely. Here are the sources for my information, and here are the sources for the pictures I used. Goodbye, Fire Chargers, Dark Blade out, and make sure to like and subscribe for more Dark Blade stuff.